Remember this?
The line will be home to
9 million residents.
And also this?
Saudi Arabia is going to make a $20 billion floating city in the Red Sea.
Well, one day the same country will also be hosting this.
The World Cup fever.
The world's best players.
The World Cup final.
Oh yes, the world's greatest football tournament is coming to Saudi Arabia. It became the de facto host of the 2034 FIFA Men's World Cup when Australia withdrew its bid.
But now the full roster of venues has been announced, with 11 stadiums being built from scratch and a further 4 being renovated to bring them up to World Cup standard.
Now, before you go anywhere, this is not a sports channel and I'm definitely not a football expert, but I do know a thing or two about construction, and the venues being built for this tournament are absolutely off the charts.
Ranging from the bizarre to the brilliant, here goes. This is the B1M's 2034 World Cup Fantasy Football Stadium team. Let's kick off with the captain, the King Salman International Stadium in Riyadh. It'll be the biggest stadium in Saudi Arabia and is set to host the World Cup final. As well as the stadium, the complex will feature a BMX track, volleyball and basketball courts. To boost the site's green credentials, it'll also feature 96,500 square metres of garden blanketed over walls, roofs and parks.
Although it's questionable just how sustainable it is maintaining a lush planting scheme the size of Ellis Island in the middle of a desert.
The King Salman International is one of 8 stadiums that are being built or renovated in the capital city Riyadh. One of those being restored is the King Fahd Sports City Stadium. Originally opened in 1987, it's famous for its roof, which is made of white fabric stretched over high cantilevered arches. This iconic structure is intended to evoke the form of a Bedouin tent, an idea that was more recently put to use on Qatar's Al Bayt Stadium for the 2022 tournament. Just like the King Salman International, the King Fahd Sports City will be absolutely massive. Both stadiums have a capacity of 92,000, far above other World Cup or even club level venues. Despite that, we're relegating this one to the bench, and if that seems harsh, then have a look at our 2 wingers, the Roshn and Prince Mohammed bin Salman stadiums.
Now, if you've been paying attention over the last few years, you'll know that Saudi Arabia has become something of an unlikely champion of avant-garde and experimental architecture. But even so, these stadiums are something else.
The Roshn Stadium is so experimental that it doesn't even have an architect attached to it yet, and instead looks like an elemental force that's burst itself out of the earth. All we really know is that it's massive. There's a capacity of 45,000, which isn't big by Saudi standards, but the whole site is going to cover an area of 450,000 square metres, which is about the same size as the Vatican.
But if you think that looks like something out of Halo, this is the Prince Mohammed bin Salman Stadium.
Originally announced in January, the venue is formed of geometric blocks covered in LED screens. The roof and pitch are both retractable, which along with the futuristic architecture has developers hoping it could one day become the home of esports and drone racing. It also happens to be sitting on the edge of a cliff.
Now, these 2 venues could completely revolutionise stadium architecture, but as with so many of Saudi Arabia's so-called giga projects, the big question is, if they get built, will they actually look anything like their renders?
We've placed both stadiums out wide because, like with all the wingers, there's a danger of style over substance, and they may struggle in the opening fixture of expectation versus reality.
Now, let's just take a step back a moment. Like the last World Cup, there's every possibility that the 2034 final could go down to penalties. And if you're up in front of the goalkeeper, you could be feeling more than just a little bit anxious. But as I know from personal experience, you don't need to be a star striker with the world watching to struggle with your mental health or to try therapy. Seeking guided help from an expert can be really reassuring and help give new perspectives on things that are weighing on your mind.
Therapy is a great opportunity to use a safe space to get things off your chest and make a positive improvement in your mental health. This week's video's paid partner BetterHelp is on a mission to help you take that first step.
It's a great platform that connects therapists with clients, and it's super easy to get started. Just fill in a questionnaire, and in most cases you'll be matched with a therapist in a couple of days.
Their therapists are carefully selected and fully qualified. If you have any questions, their support team is there to help, and you can always switch to someone you feel more comfortable talking to. Building up trust is important. That's why BetterHelp has over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot.
If you're struggling or just feel like you need some help, you can get started today. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/B1M. You'll also get 10% off your first month of therapy.
Till then, let's get back to those mind-blowing stadiums.
We're on much more stable ground with our back row.
Bringing up the rear is this trio of venues by stadium heavyweights Populous, and this entry by GMP Arquitecton, who recently worked on the new Real Madrid stadium, the Santiago Bernabeu. The Jeddah Central Development Stadium is unique in that it's the only stadium designed to actually blend in. The venue is surrounded by a development of mixed-use buildings which erase the boundaries of the stadium and resemble the flat brown roofs and whitewashed walls of the historic Al Balad district nearby. And it's not the only stadium inspired by traditional architecture. With its sand colour palette and tent-like walls, the Prince Faisal bin Fahd Sports City Stadium is based on Salmani architecture, which uses motifs found in traditional central Saudi Arabian structures. In total, Populous is working on 8 venues for this tournament, another of which is the King Saud University Stadium.
Built in 2015, 13,000 seats are being added to increase its capacity to 46,000.
It's not the flashiest of stadiums, but it's rock solid, and along with the King Khalid University, it's perfect for our back row. Finishing our defensive lineup is the new Murabba Stadium, another enigmatic venue. Its wild design isn't deterred by the lack of an architect.
Again, not much is known about this stadium other than it doesn't look like anything else on Earth.
But its design hasn't come completely out of left field. Its finish is inspired by the bark of an acacia tree, which holds particular significance in Islam, and the stadium is surrounded by huge buildings that look like desert canyons. We're putting this behemoth in goal because it's huge, rock solid, and like all the best keepers, a little bit crazy.
So, are any of these actually being built? Well, it's early days, but of the 11 new venues, 2 are currently under construction and a further 2 are being renovated. Question marks hang over a lot of them, but none more so than the most ambitious one of all, the NEOM Stadium.
In a crowded field, this is perhaps the most ambitious of them all. The stadium will sit on top of the Line, Saudi Arabia's 170-kilometre linear megacity. If it gets built, it'll be the highest stadium in the world and also the only one on top of a super tall linear skyscraper.
But that's a very big if. Ever since the Line was announced in 2022, commentators have been trying to work out just how serious its developers are.
Various glimpses of construction footage have been released, but earlier this year reports began emerging that the city, along with other gigaprojects, were being scaled back. If it does go ahead, then we've got some pretty major questions about how it's going to operate. Specifically, how do the match organisers intend to quickly get 46,000 fans up and down the 500-metre high stadium? Most venues use their size to disperse crowds and funnel people into multiple entry points. But even with this, we've seen some serious issues in overcrowding at major sporting events in recent years.
We're going to turn now to the chaos outside Hard Rock Stadium in Miami last night.
The crowd was eventually allowed to proceed, but chaotic scenes continued closer to the ground.
Right now, it's hard to see how any stadium that relies on elevators could avoid issues like this.
Coming back down to earth, it's time to complete our substitutions.
On the bench next to the King Fahd Sports City are 2 stadiums named after the former monarch, King Abdullah, and controversially, the striking Qiddiya Coast Stadium. Now, the KAEC Stadium will be the centrepiece of a new city planned for the Red Sea coast near Jeddah, with construction beginning in 2027. Its neighbour, also in Jeddah, the KASC, was completed in 2014 and is being upgraded for the World Cup.
Now, we've benched these stadiums, not because there's anything particularly wrong with them, but because compared to their teammates, there's nothing particularly striking about them, all of which makes our final substitution pretty controversial.
You see, the Qiddiya Coast Stadium has style and substance. These large fins are designed to resemble a Mexican wave, and it's hoped it'll create a new icon for the region's cultural development.
Construction is due to start in 2029 and complete in 2032. Now, it's often the way with World Cups that they get criticised for having stadiums that are built and then not really used afterwards. But after the final whistle blows here, there are big plans for this venue.
The top tier of seats is going to be removed to reduce the capacity to 25,000. And the stadium's being fitted with a retractable pitch, partitions and curtains which can transform it into an esports arena, concert venue and much more. Finishing our midfield is the South Riyadh Stadium. It's another venue by Populous, and like the Prince Faisal bin Fahd Sports City, is inspired by Riyadh's Salmani architecture. It's sleek, but practical and hard-working, which is exactly what you want from a midfielder.
And saving the very best to last, no team would be complete without its star striker. This is the Aramco Stadium.
Designed by Populous, the spiralling shape is created by overlapping structures which were inspired by the whirlpools that form in the nearby Persian Gulf. Inside, ramps and staircases follow this spiralling form, which then leads spectators down into the elliptical bowl. This shape ensures uninterrupted views of the pitch for all 47,000 spectators and helps create natural ventilation. The head count can be increased to 55,000 to allow the venue to host concerts. Like any good striker, it's got style and panache and actually lives up to the hype. While it's perhaps a bit hard to believe that some of the more experimental stadiums will ever get built, the Aramco Stadium already has dates in its diary. It's set to host the AFC Asian Cup in 2027.
But no amount of iconic architecture will be able to silence the inevitable backlash against Saudi Arabia's human rights record, which its construction industry in particular is known for.
In June this year, the Building and Woodworkers International Organisation filed a formal complaint against what it described as forced labour among migrant workers, citing 21,000 workers who remain unpaid for their work. In addition to this, the BBC revealed earlier this year that security forces were authorised to use lethal force while clearing land allocated for the line. Saudi Arabia's ambitions for its World Cup stadiums really are off the charts. But the question for this tournament is not one of sport, but one of construction. If the venues do meet expectations, it'll be easily the most spectacular World Cup in history.
Whatever this tournament ends up looking like, you can be sure that the expectations, hopes and aspirations are all going to be sky high. And not just because of the football.
This video was sponsored by BetterHelp. You can learn more about that at the link below.
Don't forget that we're inspiring the next generation of stadium builders through our investment into Brickborrow, a fantastic LEGO subscription service. You can learn more and get started today over at brickborrow.com. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.